They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I prefer mine microwaved and served at a dinner party where everyone can watch the bastards choke on it. My name is Rick Morrison, and 3 months ago I had what most people would call a perfect life. Beautiful wife, 2 great kids, a house in Meadowbrook Heights that screamed, "We've made it," and a marriage that looked solid from the outside, the key phrase there being from the outside. Laura Morrison, my wife of 15 years, had always been the type who needed everything to look perfect. Perfect lawn, perfect dinner parties, perfect Christmas cards where we all wore matching sweaters and smiled like we'd been lobotomized. I used to joke that she'd schedule her periods if she could manage it. But lately, the cracks in our perfect facade had started showing, and I was getting tired of spackling over them. "Rick, did you remember to pick up the wine for tonight?" Laura called from upstairs, her voice carrying that particular edge that meant I'd already disappointed her somehow. "Tonight, right?" Mike Lane and his wife Rebecca were coming over for dinner again for the 4th time this month, which was about 3 times more than I could stomach Mike's smug face and his habit of explaining my own job to me. "Got it," I called back, looking at the bottles of overpriced Cabernet sitting on the kitchen counter. The good stuff, just like you asked. Mike Lane was Laura's best friend from college, though best friend seemed like an inadequate term for someone who called my wife at 10 p.m. to discuss his feelings about his marriage. He was one of those guys who wore expensive cologne to hide the stench of his personality. A successful lawyer who drove a BMW and treated every conversation like a cross-examination. The worst part, he was actually good-looking in that polished Kendall way that made me want to check if there was anything anatomically correct going on down there. "Daddy, why does Mom always act weird when Mr. Lane comes over?" Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I turned to find my 13-year-old son Jaime standing in the kitchen doorway, controller in hand, looking genuinely puzzled. Kid had always been sharp, too sharp sometimes. "What do you mean, weird?" I asked, though I knew exactly what he meant, like she changes her clothes 3 times and puts on that perfume that makes me sneeze and she gets all giggly. Jaime made a face. "It's gross out of the mouths of babes. Your mom just wants to be a good hostess, buddy." "Mrs. Lane seems nice, though," Jaime continued. "She always asks about my games and actually listens, not like Mr. Lane." Rebecca Lane was indeed nice, quiet, thoughtful, with the kind of intelligence that didn't need to announce itself every 5 minutes. She was also completely invisible to her husband, which should have been my first clue about what kind of man Mike really was. "Why don't you go set up in the basement for tonight?" I suggested. "You and Chloe can hang out down there while the adults do their boring adult thing." Jaime nodded and headed off, but not before adding, "Mr. Lane talks to you like you're stupid, Dad." "I don't like it. Smart kid. Smarter than his old man, apparently. Because it took me another month to figure out what was really going on." Laura came downstairs wearing a black dress that I'd never seen before, something that happened with increasing frequency these days. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, and she smelled like she'd bathed in expensive perfume. "How do I look?" she asked, doing a little spin. "Like you're trying to impress someone," I said, then immediately regretted it when her face went cold. "I'm trying to look nice for our guests, Rick. Some of us care about making a good impression." There it was, the subtle dig that suggested I didn't care, that I was somehow failing as a husband because I preferred comfort over fashion and honesty over performance. The doorbell rang before I could respond, which was probably for the best. "I'll get it," Laura said, smoothing down her dress and checking her reflection in the hallway mirror one more time. I heard Mike's voice before I saw him. Loud, confident. The kind of voice that expected everyone to stop what they were doing and pay attention. "Laura, you look absolutely stunning tonight." I walked into the foyer to find Mike holding my wife's hands, looking her up and down like he was appraising a piece of art he was thinking about buying. Rebecca stood behind him holding a bottle of wine and wearing a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Rick," Mike said, finally acknowledging my existence with a firm handshake that lasted just a little too long. "Good to see you, buddy." I hated being called buddy by Mike almost as much as I hated the way he looked at my wife. Mike, Rebecca. I took the wine from Rebecca and gave her a genuine smile. "Thanks for this. How are you doing?" "Oh, you know," Rebecca said with a slight shrug. "Keeping busy with the kids' activities. Mike has been working so much lately I barely see him." "Important case," Mike said, not looking at his wife. "High-profile client. You wouldn't understand the pressure, Rick." And there it was, the first condescending comment of the evening. We weren't even through the appetizers yet. Dinner was the usual performance. Laura had made her famous chicken marsala, which was actually pretty good, though she'd never admit she got the recipe from her mother. Mike dominated the conversation, talking about his cases, his clients, his opinions on everything from politics to wine selection. "You know, Rick," Mike said, cutting into his chicken with surgical precision. "Laura was telling me about some security issues at your company. Sounds like you guys could use some legal consultation." I glanced at Laura, who suddenly became very interested in her wine glass. "What security issues?" "Oh, just some concerns about data protection compliance issues." Mike waved his hand dismissively. "Nothing you can't handle, I'm sure, but sometimes it helps to have a professional perspective. The thing was, we didn't have any security issues. My company's security was tight. I'd made sure of that. So either Laura was making things up to give Mike an excuse to talk to me about work, or she was sharing information she shouldn't have been sharing." "I think we're covered," I said carefully. "But thanks for the offer." Mike smiled, but it didn't look friendly. Of course, just trying to help out a friend. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of small talk and wine. Rebecca asked about the kids, complimented the food, and made genuine conversation. Mike held court, told stories about his legal victories, and found subtle ways to make me feel like an idiot in my own home. But the real show started after dinner when we moved to the living room. "Laura, this wine is exceptional," Mike said, settling onto the couch next to my wife, closer than necessary. "You have excellent taste." "Rick picked it out," Laura said, but she was smiling at Mike like he'd just complimented her on splitting the atom. "Did he now?" Mike looked at me with surprise. "Well, good choice, buddy." I was starting to understand how people ended up on those true crime shows. Rebecca sat in the armchair across from me, and I noticed she was watching her husband with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not anger exactly, more like resignation. "So, Rebecca," I said, "how's your book club going?" Her face lit up. "Oh, it's wonderful. We just finished reading this mystery novel about a woman who discovers her husband is having an affair. Very well written, though the ending was a bit intense." "Sounds interesting," I said. "What happens in the end?" "Well, she gets her revenge, of course, but not in the way you'd expect." Rebecca took a sip of her wine. "She's very clever about it, very patient." Mike wasn't paying attention to his wife's literary discussion. He was too busy laughing at something Laura had whispered to him. "I should probably get going soon," Rebecca said, checking her watch. "Early morning tomorrow." "Oh, but we're having such a good time," Laura protested. "Mike was just telling me about his new case, was he?" Rebecca's voice was perfectly pleasant, but there was something underneath it. He doesn't usually discuss his work at home anymore. Mike finally looked at his wife. "This is different. Laura understands the complexities." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Laura understands the complexities like his own wife wouldn't. Well, I said, standing up, it has been fun, but Rebecca's right. It's getting late. Mike looked annoyed at being rushed, but he couldn't argue without seeming rude. The goodbyes took another 10 minutes with promises to do it again soon and compliments about the dinner. After they left, I helped Laura clean up in silence. She was humming, actually humming, while she loaded the dishwasher. "Good evening," she said finally. "Yeah, great. Mike really appreciates having someone to talk to about his work. Rebecca doesn't really understand the legal world, right? Because she's only married to a lawyer." Laura shot me a look. "Don't be sarcastic, Rick. It doesn't suit you." That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out why I felt like I'd just watched my wife audition for a role in someone else's life. I was about to find out I wasn't wrong. The first real clue came 3 weeks later, and it wasn't even something I was looking for. I was doing laundry, one of the many household tasks that had somehow become my responsibility, when I found a receipt in Laura's jeans pocket, the Grandview Hotel. Room service for 2, champagne and strawberries. Last Tuesday afternoon. Last Tuesday, Laura had told me she was having lunch with her sister. I stood there in our laundry room holding this piece of paper and felt the bottom drop out of my world. The Grandview was downtown, expensive, the kind of place you went for special occasions or when you wanted to impress someone or when you wanted privacy. My hands were shaking as I took a picture of the receipt with my phone. I wasn't sure why. Some instinct for self-preservation. Maybe evidence for later when I'd need to prove to myself that this was really happening. The smart thing would have been to confront Laura immediately. The smart thing would have been to ask for an explanation. Give her a chance to tell me it was innocent, that there was some reasonable explanation for why my wife was ordering champagne and strawberries at a hotel on a Tuesday afternoon. Instead, I put the receipt back in her pocket and finished the laundry. Because deep down, I already knew what the explanation was. I just wasn't ready to hear it yet. Over the next few days, I started paying attention to things I'd been ignoring. Laura's phone, which she now kept face down and never left unattended. The new clothes that kept appearing in her closet. The way she'd started working late more often, always with vague explanations about client meetings and project deadlines. The way she'd started saying Mike's name more often in casual conversation, like she was testing how it sounded. "Mike thinks we should refinance the house," she'd say over breakfast. "Mike recommended this new restaurant downtown. Mike says the market's going to turn around soon." Since when did Mike become our financial advisor, restaurant critic, and economic forecaster? I started keeping a list on my phone. Not because I was planning anything specific, just because I needed to organize the chaos in my head. Dates, times, inconsistencies in her stories. The list grew longer every day. Then came the night that changed everything. Laura was in the shower and her phone was charging on the nightstand. It buzzed with a text message and the preview showed on the lock screen. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same place, same time. M for Mike." I stared at that message until the screen went dark. Then stared at the black screen until I heard the shower turn off. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure Laura would hear it when she came out of the bathroom. She emerged in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel, looking relaxed and happy in a way she hadn't looked around me in months. "Good shower?" I asked, my voice sounding normal somehow. "Very relaxing." She picked up her phone, saw the message, and smiled. Actually smiled. Then she deleted it. I watched my wife of 15 years delete a message from another man, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. "I'm going to have lunch with Sarah tomorrow," she said, not looking at me. "Might be late getting back." Sarah, her sister's name was Sandra, and Laura knew I knew that. "Sounds good," I said. "Tell Sarah I said hi." Laura nodded, still not looking at me, and I knew she hadn't even registered the mistake. That night I didn't sleep. I lay there next to my wife, listening to her breathe, and tried to figure out how long this had been going on. The hotel receipt was 3 weeks ago, but the way Mike had acted at dinner, the way Laura had responded to him, this wasn't new. I thought about Jaime's observation about his mother acting weird around Mike. How long had my 13-year-old son been watching his mother flirt with another man? How long had I been the only one who didn't see what was happening in my own house? The next morning, Laura left for her lunch with Sarah, wearing a new dress and enough perfume to choke a horse. She kissed me goodbye, actually kissed me and told me she loved me. I waited until her car was out of the driveway, then called Neil. Neil Patterson had been my friend since college and was now a private investigator. He'd left the police force 5 years ago after getting tired of the politics and bureaucracy. And now he made a decent living catching cheating spouses and tracking down insurance fraud. "Rick, what's up, man?" "I need a favor," I said. "And I need you to not ask too many questions." There was a pause. This about Laura? Neil had always been perceptive. It's what made him a good cop and a better PI. "Yeah." "Where is she supposed to be today?" "Lunch with her sister, but her sister's name is Sandra, not Sarah. And she's having lunch with Mike Lane instead. The lawyer, your neighbor. Friend, not neighbor." "And yeah, that Mike Lane." Another pause. "You want me to follow her?" "I want you to document whatever you find. Photos, times, locations, everything legal and admissible. Rick, you sure about this? Once you know, you can't unknow." I looked around my kitchen at the family photos on the refrigerator, at the coffee mug Laura had left in the sink with lipstick on the rim. I already know Neil. I just need proof. Neil met me that evening at Ali's, a bar downtown that was dark enough for private conversations and far enough from Meadowbrook Heights that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. He slid a manila envelope across the table without saying anything. Inside were photographs. Laura and Mike entering the Grandview Hotel at 12:30 p.m. Laura and Mike leaving the Grandview Hotel at 3:15 p.m. Mike's hand on Laura's back as they walked through the lobby. Laura laughing at something Mike was saying. Laura kissing Mike goodbye in the parking garage. The last photo showed Mike's BMW pulling out of the garage and Laura's Honda following 30 seconds later. "How long?" I asked. This was just today, but based on what I saw. Neil shook his head. "They're comfortable together. This isn't new." I stared at the photos until they blurred. My wife, my friend in living color. "There's something else," Neil said. I ran Mike's plates, did some checking. He's been at that hotel at least once a week for the past 2 months. Always the same room. Room 412. How did you never mind? Yeah, 412. The same room number that was on the receipt I'd found in Laura's pocket. "What do you want to do?" Neil asked. I thought about that question for a long time. What did I want to do? The old Rick would have gone home and confronted Laura. Would have demanded an explanation, given her a chance to end it, tried to work things out for the sake of the kids. But the old Rick hadn't been sitting in a bar looking at photos of his wife kissing another man. "I want to think about it," I said finally. "Rick, whatever you're planning, I'm not planning anything yet." That was a lie. I was already planning something, I just didn't know what yet. I went home that night and acted normal. Had dinner with the family, helped Chloe with her homework, watched TV with Jaime. Laura was in a great mood talking about her wonderful lunch with Sarah and how they'd lost track of time shopping. "Did you buy anything?" I asked. "Oh, just some little things, nothing important, more lies." The photos showed her coming out of the hotel empty-handed. After the kids went to bed, Laura and I sat in the living room pretending to watch some show about house flippers. She was texting someone, smiling at her phone. "Good episode," I said when it ended. Laura agreed, though she hadn't looked at the TV once. "I was thinking we should have Mike and Rebecca over again soon," I said casually. Laura's head snapped up. "Really? I thought you didn't like having them over. I've been thinking about what Mike said about the legal consultation. Maybe he's right. Maybe I should get a professional perspective." Laura's smile was radiant. "That's a great idea, Rick. I think Mike would really appreciate that. I bet he would. Why don't you call him tomorrow? Set something up for this weekend." "I will," Laura said, already reaching for her phone. "I'll call him first thing." I went to bed that night knowing exactly what I was going to do. Mike wanted to give me a professional perspective. I was going to give him one right back. Laura called Mike the next morning before I'd even finished my coffee. I could hear her from the kitchen, her voice bright and excited, explaining that I'd changed my mind about the legal consultation. "He really wants your professional opinion," she was saying. "You know how stubborn Rick can be, but he's finally coming around." Stubborn Rick. That's what I'd become in the narrative of my own marriage. "Saturday evening would be perfect," Laura continued. "We could have dinner and then you and Rick could talk business." She paused, listening to whatever Mike was saying, and her laugh was different than the one she used with me. Lighter, more genuine. "I'm sure Rebecca won't mind," Laura said. "She always seems to enjoy our dinners." Another pause. "Oh, she's not feeling well. That's too bad. Well, maybe next time." I felt a cold smile spread across my face. Rebecca wasn't feeling well, or Mike didn't want his wife there while he played house with mine. No, just come by yourself then." Laura was saying, "Rick really needs your advice, and we can't let Rebecca's headache get in the way of business." When she hung up, Laura was practically glowing. "Good news," she announced. "Mike can come Saturday evening. Rebecca's not feeling well, so it'll just be him." "Shame about Rebecca," I said. "I like her." "Oh, she'll be fine, probably just a headache or something." Laura busied herself cleaning the already clean kitchen, humming that same tune she'd hummed after their last dinner together. I spent the rest of the week preparing, not for dinner, for what was going to happen after dinner. First, I called Rebecca. "Hi, Rebecca, it's Rick Morrison. How are you feeling?" There was a pause. "I'm feeling fine, Rick." "Why do you ask?" "Laura mentioned you weren't feeling well, that you couldn't make it to dinner Saturday night." Another pause, longer this time. I wasn't aware we'd been invited to dinner Saturday night. "Bingo." "Oh," I said, injecting confusion into my voice. Maybe I misunderstood. "Mike is coming over for a business consultation, and Laura mentioned that you weren't feeling well enough to join us." "I see." Rebecca's voice was carefully neutral. "Well, Mike didn't mention any business dinner to me." "Probably just forgot," I said. "You know how busy he's been lately." "Yes," Rebecca said quietly. "He has been very busy." "Well, maybe next time," I said. "Hope you feel better soon." "Thank you, Rick. I'm sure I'll be fine." After I hung up, I sat in my office and thought about Rebecca Lane. Quiet, intelligent Rebecca, who read books about women getting revenge on cheating husbands, who watched her husband flirt with other women and said nothing, who was slowly disappearing in her own marriage. I wondered what she was thinking right now. Next, I called Neil. "I need you to do something for me Saturday night," I said. "What kind of something?" "The legal kind. I want everything documented, times, photos, audio if possible." "Rick, what are you planning?" "I'm planning to apologize." "Apologize for what?" "For being such a terrible friend." Saturday evening arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. Laura had spent the entire day preparing, cooking, cleaning, changing clothes 3 times. She'd settled on a red dress that I'd never seen before, something that showed more skin than she usually displayed for business dinners. "You look nice," I said when she came downstairs. Thank you. She checked her reflection in the hallway mirror for the 100th time. I want to make a good impression. This could be important for your career. My career? Right. Mike arrived at 7 sharp carrying a bottle of expensive wine and wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. Rick, he shook my hand with that same too firm grip. Looking forward to our chat tonight. Me too, I said. I've been thinking a lot about what you said about needing a professional perspective. Smart man. It's always good to get expert advice. Laura appeared at my elbow, radiant in her red dress. Mike, you look wonderful, and this wine you shouldn't have. Only the best for my favorite hostess, Mike said, and I watched him look my wife up and down like she was on the menu. Dinner was Laura's best performance yet. She'd made beef Wellington, something she'd never attempted before, and it was actually impressive. The conversation flowed easily with Mike holding court as usual and Laura hanging on his every word. I played my part perfectly, the grateful husband finally ready to listen to Mike's wisdom. I asked questions about legal compliance, nodded thoughtfully at his responses, and generally acted like a man who'd finally recognized his intellectual superior. You know, Rick, Mike said over dessert, I have to say, I'm impressed. Most people in your position would be too proud to ask for help. Most people in my position don't have access to someone with your expertise, I replied. Mike pined. Laura beamed. I counted down the minutes until showtime. After dinner, we moved to the living room. Laura served coffee and cognac, then excused herself to clean up the kitchen, though I noticed she took her time about it, finding reasons to walk past the living room doorway every few minutes. So, Mike said, settling into my favorite chair with his cognac. Tell me about these security concerns. Well, I began. It's interesting that you mentioned security because I've been having some concerns about that lately. Oh, what kind of concerns? Personal security, mostly. You know how it is. You think you can trust the people closest to you and then you find out you can't. Mike's smile faltered slightly. I'm not sure I follow. Oh, I think you do. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery. I think you follow perfectly. I turned the phone toward him, showing him the first photo Neil had taken. Mike and Laura entering the Grand View Hotel. Mike went very still. Rick, I can explain. Can you? I swiped to the next photo, Mike's hand on Laura's back. Because I'd love to hear the explanation for this. It's not what it looks like. Really? Another swipe. Laura kissing Mike goodbye. What does it look like to you? Mike sat down his cognac with shaking hands. Rick, you have to understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I stood up, still holding the phone. I understand that my wife has been sleeping with my friend for at least 2 months. I understand that you've been coming into my home, eating my food, and laughing at me behind my back. I understand that you're both liars and cheats. Rick, please let me explain. Explain what? Explain how you convinced my wife to betray her family? Explain how you looked me in the eye and called me buddy while you were screwing my wife? Explain how you're going to tell your wife about this. Mike went pale. You can't tell Rebecca. She doesn't need to know about this, doesn't she? I think she has a right to know what kind of man she married. Rick, please think about what this would do to our families, to the kids. I am thinking about the kids. My kids who've been watching their mother act like a lovesick teenager around another man. Laura appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of raised voices. She took one look at my phone, at Mike's face, and knew the game was over. Rick, she said quietly. Laura, perfect timing. Mike was just about to explain to me how this is all a big misunderstanding. Laura moved into the room, her face pale but her chin raised defiantly. How long have you known? Long enough. The question is, how long has this been going on? Rick, I never meant for this to happen, but it did happen again and again. Every Tuesday for 2 months, according to the hotel records. Mike stood up abruptly. I should go. Sit down, I said, and something in my voice made him obey. We're not finished here. What do you want? Laura asked. What do I want? I laughed, and it didn't sound like a pleasant sound. I want my wife back. I want my friend back. I want the last 2 months of my life back. But since I can't have any of those things, I'll settle for an apology. Rick, Mike started, not from you, from her. I looked at Laura. I want you to apologize to me, to the kids, and to Rebecca. Rebecca doesn't have to know about this, Laura said quickly. Oh, but she does. She absolutely does, because you see, I called Rebecca earlier this week, asked her how she was feeling, mentioned that she wasn't coming to dinner because she was sick. Mike's face went white. Funny thing, I continued. Rebecca had no idea what I was talking about, didn't know anything about a business dinner, wasn't sick at all. You bastard, Mike whispered. No, Mike, you're the bastard. I'm just the husband who figured it out. Laura was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Rick, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can get divorced, I said calmly. And Mike can explain to Rebecca why their marriage is over too. Please, Mike said, don't do this. Think about what you're destroying. I'm not destroying anything. You already did that. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think it's time for you to leave, Mike. Go home to your wife. Tell her the truth or don't. She'll find out soon enough either way. Mike looked at Laura, then at me, then back at Laura. This isn't over, he said. Yes, I said, it is. After Mike left, Laura and I stood in our living room and looked at each other across the wreckage of our marriage. What happens now? She asked. Now you pack a bag and go stay with your sister, the real one, Sandra. And you think about whether you want to try to save this marriage or if you'd rather be with Mike. I choose you, she said quickly. I choose our family. Do you? Because you've had a lot of opportunities to choose us over the past 2 months. And you chose Mike every time. Laura was sobbing now, ugly crying that made her makeup run in black streaks down her face. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything. I said it meant our marriage vows didn't matter to you. It meant our kids didn't matter to you. It meant I didn't matter to you. That's not true. Then why did you do it? Laura opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no answer, or at least no answer that would make any of this better. Pack a bag, I said again. We'll figure out the rest later. After Laura left, I poured myself a large whiskey and sat in my living room, surrounded by the evidence of our perfect life. Family photos, kids' artwork on the refrigerator. The remnants of the dinner Laura had cooked to impress her lover. My phone buzzed with a text from Neil. How did it go? I typed back, Phase 1 complete. Phase 1. I looked at the photos on my phone, thought about Mike's face when he realized I knew. Thought about Rebecca sitting at home while her husband lied to her. This is just the beginning, I typed, and it was. Rebecca Lane called me the next morning at 8 a.m. Rick, I hope I'm not calling too early. Not at all, Rebecca. How are you? There was a long pause. Mike came home last night and told me about your conversation. Did he tell you everything? Another pause. He told me enough. I waited, letting her process whatever Mike had shared. I had a feeling his version of events had been heavily edited. Rick, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me, of course. How long have you known? About a week, but I suspect it's been going on longer than that. 2 months, Rebecca said quietly. I found hotel receipts 2 months ago. I confronted Mike about it, and he said it was for client meetings. You knew? I suspected, but suspecting and knowing are different things. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath. May I ask how you found out? I told her about the receipt, about Neil's investigation, about the photos. I didn't spare any details. She deserved to know exactly what her husband had been doing. I see, she said when I finished. And Laura? How is she handling this? She's staying with her sister for now. We haven't decided what comes next. But you have decided about Mike and me. It wasn't a question. Rebecca, I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. Actually, it is exactly what I wanted to hear. I've been living in limbo for 2 months, wondering if I was crazy, if I was imagining things. At least now I know. There was something in her voice that I recognized. The same cold anger that had been building in me for the past week. What are you going to do? I asked. What are you going to do? I honestly don't know yet. Well, Rebecca said, when you figure it out, let me know. I might want to help. After Rebecca hung up, I made coffee and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Relief that the truth was finally out. Anger that it had taken this long to surface. Satisfaction that Mike and Laura were finally facing consequences. All of the above, probably. Jaime came downstairs around 9, Laura looking confused. Dad, where's Mom? She's staying with Aunt Sandra for a few days. Why? I looked at my 13-year-old son and tried to figure out how much truth he could handle. Mom and I are having some problems right now. We need some time apart to figure things out. Jaime nodded slowly. Is it because of Mr. Lane? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. What makes you ask that? I'm not stupid, Dad. I see how Mom acts around him. And last night I heard you guys arguing about him. I sat down at the kitchen table and gestured for Jaime to join me. What did you hear? Not everything, but enough. Jaime looked older than his 13 years. Are you and Mom getting divorced? I don't know yet, buddy. Maybe. Good, Jaime said, and the vehemence in his voice surprised me. Jamie, Dad, she's been lying to you, to all of us, and she's been mean to you like all the time. You're happier when she's not here. Out of the mouths of babes again. It's complicated. No, it's not. She chose Mr. Lane over us. That's not complicated. That's just shitty. I should have corrected his language, but he wasn't wrong. Chloe appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas. Where's Mommy? Aunt Sandra's house, Jaime said before I could answer. She and Dad are getting divorced because Mom's been cheating with Mr. Lane. Jamie, I started to protest, but Chloe just nodded. I know, she said matter-of-factly. Mommy's been acting weird for forever, and Mr. Lane is gross. I stared at my 10-year-old daughter. You know I'm not blind, Daddy. Mommy gets all giggly around him and wears her fancy perfume, and he looks at her like Tommy Brennan looks at the cookies in the cafeteria. How do you feel about that? Chloe shrugged. Sad, I guess, but not surprised. Mommy hasn't been very nice to you lately. I pulled both kids into a hug, marveling at their resilience and hating that they'd had to develop it. Whatever happens, I said, you guys are my priority always. We know, Dad, Jaime said. You're the good parent. The rest of the weekend passed quietly. Laura called several times, but I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to hear her apologies or her promises to change. I needed time to think, to plan, to decide what kind of man I wanted to be when this was all over. Monday morning brought the first real consequence of my revelation. Mike called at 7 a.m. Rick, we need to talk. I think we said everything that needed to be said Saturday night. Rebecca's filing for divorce. Good for her. She's going to take everything. The house, the kids, half my practice. Maybe you should have thought about that before you started sleeping with my wife. There was a long silence. This doesn't have to destroy both our families, Mike said finally. You already destroyed both our families. I'm just making sure everyone knows who's responsible. What do you want? What do I want? I laughed. I want you to leave my wife alone. I want you to stay away from my family, and I want you to face the consequences of your choices like a man instead of whining about how unfair it all is. And if I don't, then you'll find out exactly how creative I can be when someone threatens my family." Mike hung up without another word. An hour later, Laura called. "Rick, Mike says you're trying to destroy his marriage. Mike destroyed his own marriage when he decided to cheat on his wife. But Rebecca doesn't have to know all the details." "Yes, she does. She deserves to know exactly what kind of man she married. What about what I deserve? What about our marriage? What about it, Laura? You threw it away for hotel room intimacy with a man who's now trying to convince you to help him cover up his crimes." "They're not crimes. Adultery is a crime in some states, but even if it wasn't, it's a betrayal of me, of Rebecca, of our kids. The kids don't have to know. The kids already know. They've known for weeks. They're not stupid, Laura. They see everything." There was a long silence. "What do you want me to do?" Laura asked finally. "I want you to decide what's more important to you, your marriage or your affair. Because you can't have both. I already chose. I chose you. I chose our family, did you? Because you're still defending Mike. You're still trying to protect him from the consequences of what you both did. I'm trying to protect our families. You're trying to protect yourself. There's a difference." Laura started crying again. "Rick, please, I made a mistake. I know I did, but we can fix this. Can we? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're more concerned about Mike's reputation than about our marriage. That's not true. Then prove it. Cut all contact with Mike. Help Rebecca with her divorce. Show me that you understand what you've done and that you're willing to face the consequences. I can't testify against Mike in his divorce. Why not? He didn't have any problem testifying against our marriage when he was screwing you in hotel rooms." Another long silence. "I need time to think," Laura said finally. "Take all the time you need, but understand that every day you spend protecting Mike is another day you're choosing him over us." After Laura hung up, I sat in my office and thought about the conversation. She was still defending Mike, still trying to minimize the damage to his life while our marriage burned down around us. That's when I realized Laura had already made her choice. She'd made it 2 months ago in a hotel room, and she was still making it every day. My phone rang. "Rebecca, how are you holding up?" she asked. "I've been better." "You the same. I filed the papers this morning. How do you feel?" Terrified, relieved, angry, all at the same time, she paused. "Rick, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you going to try to save your marriage?" I thought about Laura's phone call, about her continued defense of Mike, about my kids' resigned acceptance of their mother's betrayal. "I don't think there's anything left to save," I said. "Good," Rebecca said, "because I have an idea." "What kind of idea?" "The kind that makes sure Mike and Laura understand exactly what they've done to our families." I found myself smiling for the first time in days. "I'm listening." Rebecca and I met for coffee Tuesday morning at a place called The Grind, far enough from Meadowbrook Heights that we wouldn't run into anyone from our social circle. She looked different than I'd ever seen her. Tired but determined. There was a steel in her eyes that I didn't think Mike had ever bothered to notice. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down with my coffee. "Thank you for calling. I have to admit I'm curious about this idea of yours." Rebecca opened a leather portfolio and pulled out a stack of papers. "I've been busy since we talked yesterday. Bank records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, phone records." I looked at the documents spread across the table. "How did you get all this?" "I'm on all the accounts, on all the—" Mike never bothered to hide anything because he didn't think I was paying attention. Her smile was sharp. Men like Mike always underestimate their wives. She was right. I'd underestimated Laura for years, assumed she was just focused on social appearances and domestic perfection. I'd missed all the signs that she was capable of systematic deception. "What am I looking at?" I asked, scanning the papers. 2 months of evidence, hotel charges, restaurant bills, gifts Mike bought for Laura that he told me were for clients. Rebecca pointed to a credit card statement. This charge here, lingerie from Victoria's Secret. Mike told me it was a gift for his secretary's birthday. Jesus, it gets better or worse depending on your perspective. She flipped to another page. These are the phone records. Mike has been calling and texting Laura every day for 2 months, sometimes 20 or 30 times a day. I stared at the numbers, feeling sick. 20 or 30 calls a day meant they were in constant contact. This wasn't just a physical affair, it was an emotional relationship. There's more, Rebecca continued. Mike withdrew $5,000 in cash last month. When I asked him about it, he said it was for a client dinner, but look at this. She showed me another receipt, the Grand View Hotel Presidential Suite for 3 days. The same weekend, Mike told me he was at a legal conference in Chicago. He took her away for a weekend. While I was home with our kids, thinking my husband was working, Rebecca's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking slightly. They had a romantic getaway while I made excuses to the neighbors about why Mike wasn't at the barbecue he'd promised to attend. I thought about that weekend. Laura had told me she was visiting her college roommate in Boston. I'd stayed home with Jaime and Chloe, ordered pizza, and actually had a good time without the constant tension of Laura's presence. What do you want to do with all this? I asked. I want to destroy them, Rebecca said simply. Not physically, not illegally, but I want them to face the full consequences of what they've done. I want everyone to know what kind of people they really are. Everyone, their friends, their colleagues, their families, everyone who's been fooled by their performances. I looked at Rebecca, quiet, overlooked Rebecca, and realized I'd been underestimating her too. What did you have in mind? Rebecca smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Mike is up for partner at his law firm next month. It's the biggest career milestone of his life. He's been working toward it for 5 years. And the partners at Whitman, Kessler and Associates take a very dim view of moral turpitude, especially when it involves misusing company resources for personal affairs. She showed me another set of documents. Mike used his company credit card for some of these hotel charges, claimed they were client meetings, but I have proof that he was with Laura, not clients. That's fraud. It's certainly a violation of company policy, the kind that would disqualify someone from partnership consideration. I was beginning to understand Rebecca's plan, and I had to admire its elegance. What about Laura? I asked. Laura works in public relations, correct? For Morrison and Associates, Brennan and Associates, but yes, PR. How do you think her clients would feel about their public relations executive being involved in a very public adultery scandal? I thought about Laura's biggest client, a family values organization that promoted traditional marriage and conservative social policies. The irony would be delicious if it weren't so devastating. You've really thought this through, I said. I've had 2 months to think about it. 2 months of wondering if I was crazy, if I was imagining things, if I was a terrible wife for suspecting my husband. Rebecca's voice hardened. I'm done wondering. I'm done making excuses. I'm done being the understanding wife who pretends not to notice when her husband comes home smelling like another woman's perfume. What do you need from me? I need the photos your friend took. I need you to document any contact between Mike and Laura going forward. And I need you to be willing to provide testimony if necessary. Testimony for what? The divorce proceedings, obviously, but also for the complaint I'm filing with the State Bar Association. I stared at her. The State Bar? Adultery is considered conduct unbecoming of an attorney in this state. Mike could face professional sanctions, including suspension or disbarment. Rebecca had done her homework. This wasn't just revenge, it was systematic destruction. When I ask this week, I want to move quickly before they have a chance to coordinate their stories or hide evidence. What about your kids? For the first time, Rebecca's composure cracked slightly. My kids have been living with a father who lies to them every day, who misses their school events because he's with another woman, who treats their mother like she's invisible. She straightened her shoulders. They deserve better than that. I thought about Jaime and Chloe, about their matter-of-fact acceptance of their mother's betrayal, about how they'd said I was the good parent. Okay, I said, I'm in. Rebecca smiled, and this time it was genuine. Thank you, Rick. I couldn't do this alone. You're not alone anymore. We spent the next hour planning. Rebecca would file the complaint with Mike's law firm and the state bar on Thursday. I would contact Laura's employer with documentation of her affair. We would coordinate the timing to ensure maximum impact and minimum opportunity for damage control. One more thing, Rebecca said as we prepared to leave. I think we should tell our children the truth. Age appropriately, but honestly. They already know most of it. Good. They shouldn't have to carry the burden of their parents' lies anymore. As I drove home, I thought about the conversation. Rebecca was right. Our children had been carrying the burden of our spouse's deception for months. They'd been watching their parents' marriages disintegrate while pretending everything was normal. That ended now. Laura called that afternoon. Rick, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. And you're right. I need to choose, and I choose our family. What does that mean specifically? It means I'm cutting off all contact with Mike. It means I'll do whatever you need me to do to save our marriage, including testifying in Rebecca's divorce. There was a long pause, if that's what it takes. Yes, including full disclosure to our families and friends about what happened. Another pause. Rick, do we really need to air our dirty laundry in public? Laura, the laundry is already dirty. The question is whether we're going to be honest about how it got that way. But think about the kids. The kids already know. They've known for weeks. They're not stupid, and they're tired of pretending. What do you mean they know? I told her about my conversations with Jaime and Chloe, about their resigned acceptance of her betrayal, about their relief that the truth was finally out. Oh, God, Laura whispered. They must hate me. They don't hate you, but they're disappointed in you, and they're worried about what this means for our family. What does it mean? That depends on you. Are you really willing to choose our family over Mike? Or are you just saying what you think I want to hear? I mean it, Rick. I'll do whatever it takes. Then you should know that Rebecca is filing for divorce, and she's filing complaints against Mike with his law firm and the state bar. What? Rick, you can't let her do that. Mike's career. Mike's career is not my responsibility, my family is. But if Mike loses his job, how will he support his children? The same way he should have been supporting them all along. By being a decent father and husband instead of a cheating Rick. Please, you have to stop this. And there it was. Despite all her promises, despite her claims about choosing our family, Laura was still more concerned about protecting Mike than about repairing our marriage. No, I said, I don't have to stop anything. Mike made his choices, Rebecca is making hers, and you're making yours. What do you mean? I mean, you just chose Mike again. Even after everything that's happened, even after promising to put our family first, your first instinct is to protect him. That's not, I'm not. Yes, you are. You're more worried about Mike's career than about our children's emotional well-being. You're more concerned about his reputation than about the damage you've done to our marriage. Laura was crying again. I don't know what you want from me. I want you to stop lying to me, to yourself, to our kids. I want you to face the truth about what you've done and accept the consequences. And if I do that, if I stop defending Mike and focus on our family, can we save our marriage? I looked around my house, our house, at the family photos and the kids' artwork and the remnants of 15 years together. I don't know, I said honestly, but continuing to lie and defend Mike will definitely end it. After Laura hung up, I sat in my office and thought about the conversation. She was still trying to have it both ways. Save her marriage while protecting her lover. It wasn't going to work. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Mike just called. He wants to meet with me tomorrow to discuss our options. Should I record the conversation? I typed back, absolutely. And Rebecca, thank you for what? For showing me what it looks like when someone actually fights for their family. The response came quickly. We're going to win this, Rick. I believed her for the first time since this whole nightmare began. I actually believed we were going to win. Thursday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that usually made me optimistic about new beginnings. Today felt different, like the end of something rather than a beginning. But maybe that was exactly what I needed. Rebecca texted me at 8 a.m. It's done. Filed everything this morning. Mike doesn't know yet. I replied, Laura's employer next. Already handled. Sent the documentation an hour ago. I had to admire Rebecca's efficiency. While I'd been agonizing over decisions, she'd been taking action. My phone rang. Neil, Rick, you need to see this. See what? Check your email and maybe sit down first. I opened my laptop and found an email from Neil with a dozen photo attachments. The first few were familiar. Mike and Laura at the Grandview Hotel, but the rest were new. Mike and Laura at an upscale restaurant holding hands across the table. Mike and Laura shopping together. Laura trying on jewelry while Mike watched approvingly. Mike and Laura at a real estate office looking at brochures. Real estate brochures. Neil, when were these taken? Yesterday. I've been following them since Monday just to see what they do now that everything's out in the open. They're looking at apartments. Looks like it. And Rick, that jewelry store? Mike bought her something. Big purchase based on how long they were in there. I stared at the photos, feeling the last of my illusions crumble. While Laura had been calling me, promising to choose our family, she'd been shopping for apartments and jewelry with Mike. There's more, Neil said. I followed Mike home last night. He packed 2 suitcases and loaded them in his car. He left Rebecca, looks like it. And based on the real estate photos, I'd say he and Laura are planning to move in together. I closed the laptop and tried to process what I just learned. Laura hadn't been trying to save our marriage. She'd been buying time to plan her escape with Mike. The phone rang again. This time it was Rebecca. Rick. Mike just called. He's coming over to get the rest of his things. He says he's leaving me for Laura. I know. Neil has photos of them apartment hunting yesterday while she was promising to save your marriage. Apparently. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, Rick. I know this isn't what you wanted to hear. Actually, it is exactly what I needed to hear. Now I know where we stand. What do you want to do? I thought about my conversation with Laura the day before, about her promises and her lies, about my children's resigned acceptance of their mother's betrayal. I want to watch them burn, I said. Good. Because I have an idea. An hour later, I was parked outside Rebecca's house, watching through binoculars as Mike loaded boxes into his BMW. He looked different than I'd ever seen him, younger somehow, like a man who'd just escaped from prison. Rebecca was recording everything from her living room window, documenting Mike's abandonment of his family for the divorce proceedings. My phone buzzed with a text from Laura. Can we talk? I have something important to tell you, I typed back. I already know about the apartment hunting and the jewelry. Save your breath. The response came quickly. How did you never mind, Rick? I can explain. No need. You've explained everything perfectly. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been planning to leave with Mike while pretending to want to save our marriage. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. You knew exactly what you wanted. You just didn't want to face the consequences of choosing it. Rick, please let me come home so we can talk about this properly. I looked at the photos on my phone. Laura and Mike looking at apartments, planning their new life together while lying to their spouses. No, I typed. You made your choice. Live with it. My phone rang immediately. I let it go to voicemail, then it rang again and again. Finally, I answered. Rick, you have to listen to me. No, Laura, I don't. You've been lying to me for months. You lied on Monday when you promised to choose our family. You lied yesterday when you said you'd cut contact with Mike. You're probably lying right now. I'm not lying. Yes, I went apartment hunting with Mike, but that was before I decided to save our marriage. When did you decide that? Before or after you let Mike buy you jewelry? Silence. That's what I thought. I said, Rick, I love you. I love our family. I made a mistake, but I want to fix it. You love the idea of not facing consequences for your actions. You love the idea of having a backup plan in case your affair doesn't work out. But you don't love me. And you don't love our family. That's not true. Then why are you still with Mike? Why are you planning to move in with him? Why did you let him buy you jewelry while you were promising to save our marriage? I was scared. I didn't know what would happen if I ended things with Mike. So you decided to keep both options open, me and Mike. The safe choice and the exciting choice. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. And now you're upset because you got caught. Laura was crying again, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her, no urge to fix this. What happens now, she asked. Now you get what you wanted. You get Mike and I get a divorce. Rick, please. Laura, stop, just stop. You've made your choice over and over again. You've chosen Mike. The only difference is now you have to live with the consequences. I hung up and turned off my phone. 20 minutes later, Mike emerged from Rebecca's house carrying the last box. He loaded it into his car, then stood in the driveway for a moment, looking at the house he'd shared with his family for 10 years. Rebecca appeared in the doorway. Even from across the street, I could see her standing straight and tall, watching her husband leave. Mike said something to her. She shook her head and closed the door. Mike stood there for another minute, then got in his car and drove away. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. It's done. He's gone. I walked across the street and knocked on her door. How are you holding up? I asked when she answered, better than I expected. She looked tired but determined. He tried to blame me, said I was cold and unresponsive, that he felt neglected. What did you tell him? I told him that neglecting your spouse doesn't justify betraying them. And I told him that he'd find out soon enough what real consequences look like. The complaints should hit his office this afternoon. The state bar will take longer, but the firm will act quickly. They can't afford to have a partner involved in a public adultery scandal. And Laura's job. I sent everything to her supervisor this morning. Photos, hotel receipts, credit card statements showing personal purchases on company time. I felt a grim satisfaction. Laura's employer was a conservative PR firm that specialized in family values clients. An adultery scandal would be career suicide. What about the kids? I asked. I told them the truth, that their father chose to leave us for another woman and that he'll have to live with the consequences of that choice. How did they take it? Better than I expected. I think they've been waiting for someone to finally be honest with them. We stood in her doorway, two people whose marriages had just ended, and I realized I felt lighter than I had in months. Rebecca, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you regret it? Any of it? She thought for a moment. I regret that it took me so long to stop making excuses for him. I regret that my children had to watch their father lie to their mother for months. But do I regret exposing the truth? Do I regret making Mike face consequences for his actions? She smiled, and it was the first genuinely happy expression I'd seen from her in months. Not for a second. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again and again. Finally, I answered. "Rick, thank God. This is Mike." "What do you want, Mike?" "I need you to stop Rebecca. She's trying to destroy my career, my reputation, everything I've worked for." "Good. Rick, please think about what this will do to our families, to the kids. I am thinking about the kids. My kids who've been watching their mother lie to their father for months. Rebecca's kids who've been watching their father abandon his family for another woman. It doesn't have to be like this. We can work something out. We already worked something out. You chose Laura. Rebecca chose divorce. And I chose to stop pretending this was all some big misunderstanding. But my job, my partnership, should have thought about that before you started sleeping with my wife. Rick, I know you're angry, but I'm not angry anymore, Mike. I'm done. Done with your lies. Done with Laura's lies. Done with pretending that any of this is salvageable. What do you want? Money? I can pay you. I don't want your money. I want you to face the consequences of your actions like a man instead of whining about how unfair it all is. This will destroy me. You destroyed yourself and you destroyed 2 families in the process. Now you get to live with that." I hung up and turned off my phone again. Rebecca was watching me with something like admiration. "Feel better?" she asked. "Actually, yes, I do." "Good, because we're not done yet." "What do you mean?" Rebecca smiled, and it was sharp and dangerous and beautiful. "Tomorrow is the Meadowbrook Heights Charity Gala, the biggest social event of the year. Everyone will be there, all our friends, all our neighbors, everyone who's been watching our perfect marriages and wondering how we do it. And I think it's time they found out the truth." I looked at Rebecca. Brilliant underestimated Rebecca and realized she was absolutely right. "What did you have in mind?" "A public apology from both of us to each other, to our children, and to everyone who's been lied to. You want to expose everything in front of everyone. I want to control the narrative. I want to make sure everyone knows exactly what happened and who's responsible." I thought about the charity gala, about all the people who'd been watching our marriages and envying our apparent happiness. "They'll be there," I said. "Mike and Laura, I'm counting on it. This will be nuclear." "Good. It's time for some nuclear honesty." I looked at Rebecca standing in her doorway planning the complete destruction of her ex-husband's reputation, and I realized I'd never been more attracted to anyone in my life. "Okay," I said, "let's do it." "Really? Really?" "But Rebecca, yes. After tomorrow night, there's no going back. Everyone will know everything." "Good," she said. "I'm tired of secrets." So was I.